We begin on a sad note this morning in Kaduna state of Nigeria, where a military aircraft belonging to the Air Force crashed in the north-central state with 2 pilots on board feared dead. The plane is believed to be a Super Tucano, which is a trainer aircraft, and it was reported that it went down inside a Nigeria Air Force base facility in Kaduna while on a training mission. Between 2015 and 2021, the country has suffered 11 military plane crashes, with no fewer than 33 officers losing their lives. Still in northern Nigeria, terrorists have killed 3 out of 26 villagers kidnapped about 3 months ago in the north-central Kaduna state for failing to pay a ransom of 20 million naira each to secure their release. The victims were taken on March 21st, and the terrorists have threatened to kill more if their demands were not met. The chief of local government, Gideon Harun Ogoni, who confirmed the killing, said assailants called to inform the community to pick up the corpses of the deceased around Dutse community along the Kaduna-Abuja highway. Now, despite an uptick in terrorist activities in recent months in Nigeria, the presidency said that Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari may face war crimes charges at the International Criminal Court if he deploys the Super Tucano aircraft against terrorists in the north. Buhari's spokesman, Garba Shehu, says the terms of agreement for the purchase of the Tucanos from the United States must be adhered to before the jets can be deployed. This is to avoid Nigeria's entering America's black book. A lot to unpack this morning. All sad stories.
Completely grim, a complete disaster. I'm going to start with the Tucano jets, and it's just, I feel Nigeria has been infantilized as a nation because of the stringent conditions. This is exactly what we face with the Abacha loot. This is exactly how you must use your own recovered loot. How exactly did we get to this point? How did we find ourselves here? And with regards to the Super Tucano jets, yes, I suppose even though I just said we've been infantilized, which I strongly believe that we are, we have made some progress. You'll remember the Obama era, where Obama blocked the sale of Cobra helicopters, which you know very well. You referred to this several times, to Nigeria, saying that we fell foul of the Leahy Law, the Leahy Amendment, but through which the United States of America will not supply weapons to any military, any kind of armed forces that have been accused of human rights abuses, which Nigeria was accused of. But that Leahy Law, the selective application, the hypocrisy, really does raise eyebrows. Saudi Arabia, Israel, Egypt have consistently had human rights controversies and have consistently enjoyed U.S. support with regards to the supply of arms. But in Nigeria, they throw the book at us. And now we have the Tucano jets, and we've been told you cannot use them. And we are seeing the very real consequences of the fact that our government is hamstrung by these really stringent requirements. People are dying, those people that were kidnapped, because the community has not been able to miraculously spirit 20 million naira to give to these terrorists as ransom. They've only been able to raise 7 million naira, which in itself is a miracle that they've been able to raise 7 million naira. People have still lost their lives, and goodness knows what's going to happen next with regards to the people that are still abducted by these people, the people they still have in their custody, to try and put pressure. Are they going to kill even more people and dump their bodies in the way they've done so callously with these 3 people? These people are a complete nightmare in this country. And we have a means of eradicating the nightmare, and we cannot. We have to just sit on our hands and watch this madness unfold. This is extremely frustrating, both for the government and for the people of Nigeria. With regards to this other tragedy that you've shared this morning of our Nigerian Air Force pilots, again, you recall last year there was a spate of, our military safety record, I'm sorry, is actually appalling. I'm just trying to remember how many there were last year, back-to-back air crashes. I believe there were 4, including one that cost senior military officials, including our Chief of Army Staff, Ibrahim Atahiru, his life. And at the time, those crashes were attributed to engine failure. One of them, 2, were shot down by the bandits that we cannot deal with decisively. We can't take the gloves off and deal with. They shot down our jets and killed our brave Air Force officials. And then there was another issue with bad weather. So what I just want to say with regards to that is that something really needs to be done to improve that flight safety record. Is it a maintenance issue? Are the aircrafts not being properly maintained? Is that the problem? There has to be a thorough investigation. We can't continue like this.
I mean, a lot has to be done, a lot has to be said as regards this. At first, we keep deceiving ourselves in this country. That's our problem. The reason why America will give you stringent measures as regards lay law, because Nigeria is not the great country and the superpower it used to be before. And I said superpower using that word cautiously because in the 70s, we called the shots. When Western nations dealt with when we dealt with us in the 70s, we know how to deal with them decisively. And I would cite a case of Nigeria nationalizing BP. Under the foreign minister then and the government of this country, under Major General Adefo, when BP was supporting the South Africans with apartheid, Nigeria nationalized BP as a punitive measure. We stood by that decision. Why? Because we're a strong nation. So collectively over the years, America can do this to us because we've not built our country. And that's why it behoves on these our leaders to even introspect and tell ourselves the truth that we can't keep going cap in hand to beg America for everything. You know why they will not deal with Saudi Arabia that way? Because they have Saudi Aramco with Saudi Arabia, because they've got interest in Saudi Arabia. So they will always look the other way.
And Israel.
And Israel. So because they've got interest. So let's tell ourselves the truth. And that's why when some leaders only think of corruption and what I call the corn and ube mentality, the small mentality, only the small things they can steal and not think about the general good and welfare of Nigeria and making Nigeria grow into a strong nation, then you see things like this. I remember at the time of Goodluck Jonathan administration, where Dr. Abbott said the other option was to go to South Africa to buy weapons and the like and see all what happened as regards that the embarrassing situation, the case of money being left on somebody's private jets. Our leaders must step up. You must make Nigeria great. Once Nigeria is great, Americans will not treat you this way. Our beds are falling too much. Our beds, I mean our planes, are falling too much. I know the argument other people will say is, plane crashes are common in the military circle. They've got many plane crashes in America and the likes. But yes, here we don't have enough planes. The AIB, after their investigations, I know the military will say they can't make it public because it's private, but we need to do better. We are losing too much pilots we've trained with a lot of man hours. Do you know how much it takes to train one pilot? Millions of dollars. Those ones gone. We remember how the case of the plane that was shot down, that I think it was Flight Lieutenant Dairo, that he ran out to and he became a hero. Our planes are getting shot down. Our planes are coming down for no just reason. We need to introspect. And the forces, the army, the Air Force need to be accountable here. We need to tell ourselves the truth in the country. The case of the kidnapping, doesn't it just show what Nigeria has become? And when people talk about they criticize, they say they don't criticize them. I always tell people, criticism is subsidized learning. We want you people to get better. That's why we criticize. We've become a country where you don't pay bandits or time their ransom. They kill people. They kill people, and the next thing they put the bodies there. So what are we talking about? We need to do more. Our leaders need to do more in this country.
Okay, first, let's deal with the kidnap first. On March 21, in a local government, Chinkun local government area, and in Angun Bulus community, persons were kidnapped in Kaduna State, the same Kaduna State. And the bandits, the terrorists, asked that ransom should be paid. But they didn't get any intervention. Nobody paid any ransom. So they decided within the last 24 hours to kill 3 of the persons. And they dumped their bodies in Bulus community and then made a phone call that those bodies should be collected. And they threatened that they will kill more. Now, before this, on March, after that, there was the train incident on March 28, whereby persons, a train traveling from Abuja to Kaduna was bombed, and persons were told that over 160 persons are still in the custody of the kidnappers, the terrorists. And they are also saying that they will only talk to the federal government. All of this, what does it say to us? It reinforces, reiterates the very serious security challenge that Nigeria faces. It shows that Nigerians are vulnerable, whether they are from Kaduna State or from any other part of the country. And in the case of Kaduna, the concern has been expressed that Kaduna seems to be a major killing field in Nigeria in the face of the threats, the security threats that we find in the country. It's very unfortunate that people have to lose their family members because the state cannot help them, and because also they too cannot help themselves, because the terrorists are saying, we only talk to government. Clearly, there's an attempt on the part of the terrorists, whether it's ISWAP or Boko Haram or whatever, to overwhelm the Nigerian state and to humiliate the Nigerian state. With the Nigerian state, under President Buhari's administration, with the escalation of the threat level in the country, will he allow his administration to be humiliated? So something has to be done. That's the expectation of Nigerians. Now, to come to the issue of Nigerian Air Force jets dropping out of the sky, like snowflakes, between 2015 and today, about 11 aircraft belonging to the Nigerian Air Force have dropped out of the skies. About 33 personnel of the Nigerian Air Force have been killed. Okay, the standard explanation is to say that this is asymmetrical war. Anything can happen. The standard explanation is to talk about engine failure. But then, that in itself is questionable. And we hope that this latest crash, in which we have been told 2 persons have died, part of a crew that was on a training mission, the critical question should be asked. Is this an indication, a firm indication, that the terrorists, as they have become bolder and more audacious, as it were, in challenging the Nigerian state, are beginning to pluck aircraft, out of the skies, the same way children stay on the ground and look for snowflakes in places where snowflakes still drop in Nigeria, Plateau State, perhaps. Now, the reference to the Tucano superjets, 12 were procured by the Nigerian government for a sum of over 432 billion naira. 6 were delivered in 2021. The governor of Kaduna State has had cause to ask the question, why has nobody deployed these Tucano jets? The presidency, in the introduction that we listened to, gave the explanation that the reason that they have not been deployed is because of human rights restrictions and all of that, and that Nigeria does not want to be in the black book of the United States. Who has ever, what kind of thought, what kind of reasoning is that? But however, what the United States said, in the case of the Tucano jets, with regard to the Lee law, which was a problem for the Jonathan administration, I don't want to go into the details, and also with the Cobra jets and the precision killing weapons that up to about 1 billion now approved for sale to Nigeria. The same issue about human rights has been raised. In the latest Cobra, aircraft that have been approved for Nigeria, the U.S. is saying, the Committee on Foreign Relations and plenary in the U.S. Congress, they are saying that they will even make available $25 million for training of the Nigerian military in issues of laws of armed conflict and international humanitarian law, because still the United States still has it at the back of its mind that these tools can be used wrongly. Okay, that we cannot, as a sovereign state, continue to give that as an excuse. The responsibility of the Nigerian state is to make sure that they understand and abide by the terms of engagement, because the international community is governed by certain rules of conduct. So if the U.S. in giving conditions, okay, what efforts have you made to respect those conditions? Regardless of the fact that Nasir El-Rufai of Kaduna State is saying, look, there will be collateral damage. It's not for him to determine that. It is for the Nigerian military hierarchy to determine that. If they have issues in terms of competence, in terms of precision, in terms of making sure that there is no collateral damage unnecessarily, they should tell us. It's not to give excuse and say, we have bought jets from the Americans, we cannot use them because we don't want to be in America's black book. That cannot be an excuse for continued failure, in dealing with the security challenges that Nigeria faces. That's the way I see it.
That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have Ruth Sodiri, Michael Wilson, Adesomawa, Aaron Akerjala to give us updates on Africa, global business, COVID-19 support and activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Morning Show here on Arise News. I guess now we're moving on to more business updates with Michael Wilson, who's joining us from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you very much.
Happy
Good morning.
birthday.
Mr. Wilson, it's your birthday
today.
It is indeed, yes.
Congratulations. But you know that has implications. I don't know how we are going to connect, since you are so far away.
Maybe we one day we will, and I suspect it may be not. It might be slightly before you think it's going to be, but that's for another day. As far as Asian markets are concerned, everything fairly mixed, really. China kept its benchmark rate. People have sort of been wondering about whether they're going to help the economy, which is clearly slowing there, but they kept their benchmark rate unchanged at 3.7%. Shanghai Composite in mainland China down a little. Hong Kong's Hang Seng down also. There's a statistic coming out now which I share with you. I don't necessarily agree with it and I'm sure you've got your own opinions as well. But apparently China container shipping, the rate at which they're exporting could expand quite rapidly towards the end of this month as the COVID outbreak eases. Again, I'm a bit skeptical about that because they seem to have locked down, as you know, Shanghai pretty comprehensively, but it may be that eases. That's what the markets are saying this morning. As far as the United States is concerned, a big rebound yesterday. The Dow added 499 points as well. We're right in the middle of a reporting season. Disney, Netflix climbing. I'll come on to Netflix in a moment. Microsoft as well, and Alphabet. But however, Netflix shares at the end of yesterday came under an enormous amount of pressure, as you know, because it's actually and this is global news. Actually, this one here is the fact that it's the first time in 10 years it's losing more subscribers than it's actually gaining. Now, what does that actually mean? Does this mean the end of peak streaming? Could be. I was saying yesterday that a lot of households which are experiencing a cost of living crisis are now restricting themselves to how much they actually use streaming television services, and Netflix certainly showing they've been the sort of poster child of streaming, actually subscribers falling there. Let's turn our attention to Germany and the EU. Germany is resisting all the calls to restart its nuclear power program. It was stopped in 2011 after that disaster, the Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan in 2011. The problem is that there are so many coalition parties now in Germany, including the Greens. They don't want to be seen to be changing their minds about nuclear power, but really that's the way forward if Germany is going to replace the energy that it might or might not be getting from Russia. An extraordinary turnaround in this country, in the UK. We've talked about the cost of living crisis. Now we've got energy companies actually telling the government that they should be supporting people who are in fuel poverty. Now, it's very difficult to define what fuel poverty is. I tend to think of it as spending a large amount of the family's disposable incomes on either keeping warm or keeping hungry or not being hungry. It's really down to that right now. And adding to that, the UK is going to have its slowest growth of the G7 in 2023. And then the IMF falling, the price falling on slow growth claims, particularly about China from the IMF, and gold actually whipsawing one way or the other, falling slightly this morning. Again, any inflation concerns and gold tends to rise. That is the global view this morning.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael. Real quickly, let's talk about the state of the British economy once again. Things keep slumping from bad to worst with all the costs and all the problems in the economy. And also, the growth forecast is down for the first time. I have one of the lowest growth numbers in the G7. What is happening to the British economy? just what is happening. And could this be end of the romance season for Netflix and other streaming sites? Because they made a lot of money during COVID. People were at home and all of that. Could that be the problem?
Yeah, I think let's do Netflix first of all. I mean, people, yes, certainly are spending less on streaming services. And also there have been complaints about the quality of the content that Netflix is actually delivering as well. Now, again, that's a very subjective kind of thing. But the whole point about Netflix is that it is about content, and that's really how it survives. It could be the end of streaming services. Who actually knows? Well, not the end, but at the end of peak streaming services, I suspect. As far as the UK economy is concerned, yes, I mean, this is extraordinary, isn't it? This is actual fuel poverty. Now, again, it's very, very difficult to define that. And it certainly goes in the face of what the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, was saying. Only a few months ago, he was saying that the successful rollout of anti-COVID vaccines was meaning that the pandemic would be subsumed much more quickly, and therefore we would have the highest growth rate in the G7. Well, clearly that is not the case, and I think that the forward look for the UK economy, I mean, I'm hoping that these inflation figures that we're seeing peak inflation right now, but things could change very rapidly indeed. So I think that going forward, it looks very bleak.
Well, Michael, I wanted you to comment on the crisis that Sri Lanka is facing. Yesterday, the protests even went a notch higher. Meanwhile, the talks had started with the IMF. But IMF is saying that unless there is assurance of debt sustainability, there will be no support coming from the IMF. And China is part of this equation because China is the major creditor to Sri Lanka. Yes, the President Rajapaksa, he has tried to put up a new cabinet also at the state level. He has tried to reduce the presence of his brothers and relatives in the government. But it looks like Sri Lanka is in very serious trouble. He cannot meet up with his sovereign bonds. He cannot balance his debt of payments equation. Who is going to bear the brunt in all of this? The obvious answer may be the people, but would there be an implosion in Sri Lanka?
I think you're absolutely right. The question is, the real question mark is over China here, isn't it really? Which way they're going to move, one way or the other. I have real problems with the IMF because whilst they appear to be holding out help, they're very, very, as you just mentioned, they're extremely strict about their loan conditions, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But it's not the kind of help that necessarily Sri Lanka needs right now. I think what it needs, for my point of view, having seen the reports from there, it needs a huge amount of government restructuring. The economy needs restructuring, and it needs a clear out as well. And as I was reporting yesterday, I don't know where the vote of no confidence is going right now, but certainly big changes are afoot there. The economy has been mismanaged, unfortunately, for years. And really what they need to do is start to regroup around their undoubtedly strong small businesses, but also their strong tourism as well, which needs to increase. That's the way that they're going to earn foreign currency, and that's the way I feel as though that's the way forward from Sri Lanka. Not, as you were saying, Doctor, yesterday, about particularly taking funds from Sri Lankans abroad and putting it into the economy. That kind of thing just does not work.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike. Wish you many more years. It's time for a short break on the morning show. When we return, we'll have Rise International correspondent Adefemi Akisoya join us for World Bank IMF Spring Meeting update happening in Washington, D.C. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. The spring meetings of the International Monetary Fund and the boards of governors of the World Bank Group brings together central bank ministers of finance and development, private sector executives and representatives from civil society organizations and academics to discuss issues of global concern, including the world economy outlook, poverty eradication, economic development, and aid effectiveness. Also featured are seminars, regional briefings, press briefings, and many other events focused on the global economy, international development, and the world's financial system. This year's spring meeting started on Monday in Washington, D.C., where Arise international correspondent Adefemi Akisanya joins us now from Washington. Adefemi, great to have you. Good morning to you. If you can hear me, can you just tell us what's been happening as regards this meetings in Washington, and good to see you again.
Oh, good morning. Good morning to you all. Well, as you said in your introduction there, this is a time where it's all about the global economy and how that is faring in the light of global issues. Now, the glaring issue that has had the most impact, obviously, will clearly be the Russian invasion in Ukraine. And that has had a negative domino effect, it seems, on the rest of the world as it pertains to the position Russia has as a global supplier of certain products and resources, and how that continues to impact an already recovering world in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic when it comes to other issues such as supply chain constraints, food insecurity, and the like. So there wasn't much surprise when we talk about the global outlook, or when you're looking at predictions from either the IMF or the World Bank as it pertains to the rate of growth in the world. There wasn't going to be too much surprises. But if we break those numbers down and we look at 2021 as a starting point, we know that the growth we saw come the tail end of 2021 was around 6%, just over 6%, around 6.1%. However, according to the global outlooks from both the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, they're seeing growth slowing to around 3.6% this year. And that's obviously because of the ramifications of many things, but mostly because of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. If we break these numbers down and look at Africa as a whole, then it becomes a bit more interesting too, because if we look at different African countries, we know that even before the issue of the Russian invasion in Ukraine, there were constraints and situations that were causing concern. If we look at debt, for example, we know that African countries are struggling with debt. Around 23 African countries, according to lines out of these meetings, are either bankrupt or at high risk of debt stress. Now, these include West African countries like Ghana and Cameroon, both of them showing indices that indicate the fact that they are showing high risk of debt constraints. And that too isn't too much of a secret, but that is also the outlook as it pertains to certain West African and African countries. But if we look at Nigeria specifically now, we know that the global outlook in terms of growth for Nigeria has actually been largely positive. Nigeria is among 14% of countries in the world who are among a group that will be recording or is expected to record positive growth, as opposed to 84% of global countries that are doing the opposite, actually recording negative growth. So if we look at Nigeria specifically, the IMF has raised its growth outlook from 2.7% for Nigeria to now 3.4%. And they've attributed that to, obviously, oil growth. We know that the oil price has definitely increased, but we also know as Nigerians that Nigeria itself hasn't been able to fully capitalize off of the global increase in oil prices because of the huge oil theft that we're seeing in the country, most especially in the southern parts of Nigeria. In addition to that, despite the fact that we have seen positive growth numbers coming out of Nigeria, another contributing factor to that is non-oil sector growth across a whole span of things. So for Nigeria, it isn't too much doom and gloom. It's actually quite positive, but we know that these are just numbers on the outside, and within the country, there are huge constraints to global growth, not to national growth rather, especially when we look at insecurity, if we're looking at the level of oil theft towards the south of the country and how that's affecting the ability Nigeria has to continue growing in the right direction. We also are well aware that Nigeria is also positioning itself to be able to capitalize better off of its own oil resource. We've got the Dangote refinery, for one, oil refinery coming down the line, and the fact that the fertilizer plant has already officially been commissioned. So there is good news rather ahead for Nigeria, but it's definitely happening at a time where the world itself is constrained by a lot of issues, but especially the Russian invasion in Ukraine.
Well, good to hear that good news, Adefemi. And can you just take us through the format of this week-long spring meetings and some of the other events we can look forward to? I know on Monday there was a really interesting conversation between, the famous girls' education advocate Malala Yousafzai and Kristalina Georgieva. So what else can we look forward to?
Absolutely. Good morning to you, Tundun. So nice to hear from you. So absolutely, there's going to be a lot of information and conversations happening. If we're looking at the structure of the spring meetings this year, they are also quite largely going to be virtual. So we've been tuning into a lot of the different conversations. Now, there was a great conversation, and we're expecting more great conversations as it pertains to climate change and how carbon financing and other issues pertaining to the environment can be capitalized upon for developing countries. So we're looking forward to those conversations. And there'll be more specific ones targeted at areas in terms of agriculture as well, technology and advancement, but definitely more conversations as it pertains to climate change and education. So there's lots happening. As it pertains to Nigeria specifically, Nigeria is currently represented at the IMF and World Bank spring meetings by the Nigerian Finance Minister, Zainab Ahmed, but also the the central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele. Both of them are in town and have been actively participating in meetings. And we're hoping that we'll be able to hear from both of those parties across the course of the day, and then definitely, of course, across the course of the week, so we can have specific information as to how Nigeria is positioning itself to capitalize, because I think when it comes to these spring meetings, there's always a lot of conversations, a lot of predictions and outlooks. But I can imagine that many Nigerian people within the country want to understand how their country is being represented and what they can look forward to as it pertains to growth and prospects for that. So again, just to summarize, more conversations along the lines of the environment, technology, education, development in all areas, but definitely financial growth and global growth as it looks like across the week.
Okay, Adefemi, I agree with you absolutely on your analysis about Nigeria. Yes, although the World Bank, IMF, they say they've upgraded the projected economic growth outlook for Nigeria, but there are issues. Nigerian authorities themselves are saying that the increase in oil price, spot price of crude oil, Brent crude, does not translate into an advantage for Nigeria. So I agree with you in that regard. But the same, IMF had said that about 86% of the global economy have had to be revised downwards, including the UK. The projected outlook for UK this year is 3.6, and the projection that it will not be more than 1.2% in 2023. And the IMF is saying that many countries, those 86% countries, representing the global community, will have to take a second look at their fiscal balances. But this should not be surprising, because ahead of this spring meeting of the Bretton Woods institutions, we knew that Ukraine, the Russian-Ukrainian war, was going to be a problem. Debt is going to be a problem, and the IMF has spoken up on the situation in Sri Lanka, which I brought up earlier on with Michael Wilson. And also inflation, that is a major problem. Global supply chain disruptions, which you mentioned. But are there any positive, news coming out of this spring meeting, particularly in terms of commitment to the refugee crisis that has been created, not just in the Russian-Ukraine situation, but also in other parts of the world, and also with regard to the unfinished business of climate change? Is there any positive news? Because it all looks very bleak. Even the positive news for Nigeria is not something that we can celebrate.
Absolutely, Dr. Rubin. You got me very happy when you said you agreed with me. It made me feel very, very special, I have to say. But yes, definitely, when it comes to positive news, it's a little few and far between. That's why we have to look at it in a general sense, but then also break it down so that we understand specifically what these things mean. So as you said, as we've both talked about, more than 80% of the global economy is going to be recording negative growth. And however, Nigeria is not among those countries because of things like an increase of the oil price. But that obviously has to be put under scrutiny, because we know better than that. We know that Nigeria could be doing far better if we didn't have to tackle the issue of oil theft. But in terms of the unfinished business of climate change, that's going to be dominating the conversations throughout the rest of this week. This will continue on until Sunday. So as and when we we get more updates, I'll be sharing them in my packages on the day and reports on the day, and be able to give you a bit more information as it pertains to the good news coming out of that. But so far, the good news that I have to offer you is that while the bulk of the world is reeling from negative shocks, as you said, inflation being there, food insecurity being there, and the ramifications to global supply chains because of issues like the Russian invasion in Ukraine, it means that the general outlook obviously isn't as positive as it can be. However, there's always going to be the prospect for growth and development. Now, if we look at debt, you mentioned debt, and that's obviously something that's causing a lot of African countries concerns. I talked about how there's a growing number, around 23 countries in Africa that are recorded either bankrupt or are on the risk of severe debt stress. So that's obviously going to be quite negative. So what we are hearing is that the World Bank will be discussing more relief packages that will stimulate these African countries or these global countries in a package that would start being rolled out from April 2022, so from this month now, onwards until June 2023. And it's expected that that relief package will support the journey towards recovery as it pertains to debt. But again, putting these numbers into perspective, we need time to see how these monies are going to be divvied across these countries and what exactly it's expected to do, because it's only giving a short-term relief if you want to solve the problem of debt with more debt. So let's just see how these things are going to work. And I'm hoping that over the course of this week, there'll be more information and more positive news I'll be able to share with you along those lines. But for now, it's still quite bleak on a general sense, but for Nigeria, not as bad as many people would have thought it would be.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, our dependable Rotis Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotis.
Good morning, Sinu. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rufai. We begin with new presidential declaration. Chris Ngige, Minister of Labour and Employment, has thrown his hat in the ring. He made the declaration, I think it was at St. Mary's Church, Catholic Church in Idemili South local government area of Anambra State. So it had been rumored that he was going to, throw his hat in the ring, and many in the business community were waiting to see whether it was going to happen. Apparently, it was supposed to happen on Tuesday, but here it is. He's throwing his hat into the ring, and speaking of hats, he's always got his fashionable Kangals there. It also puts the spotlight on unemployment, since, of course, he is the Labour Minister. If you take a look at the numbers for unemployment figures for Nigeria, as of Q4 2020, we had 33% unemployment for Nigeria. Yeah, there are the figures right there. So 33% unemployment, underemployment 22.8%. Unemployment plus underemployment, you had 55.8%. Particularly youth unemployment, 42.5%, youth underemployment, 21%, combined 63.5%. This is as of Q4 2020. So I guess, I think it's a really good thing that he's running, because the youth unemployment in this country really does need to be front and center when it comes to the elections in 2023, in addition to oil theft and other big issues. But people need jobs. The three of you, everybody that has a job, wakes up with a sense of purpose as to what to get to do that day, and in terms of productivity and so on and so forth. If you rob somebody of that, then they leads to other things. So, his record, will be scrutinized, and I think this should push unemployment to the fore as far as the conversation is concerned. Adefemi has already gone through the IMF numbers, but if we just put those numbers again on the screen, as far as the IMF revision to 3.7%, it is quite odd that they are looking at non-oil growth and oil prices as the reasons for the revision upwards for Nigeria. So there it is, 3.4% is the new GDP forecast for the IMF. Prior forecast was 2.7%. Oil, she already said, oil prices, they are rising, but foreign reserves are not benefiting from that. We know what the issues are as far as the production concerns are for the country. So it's pretty curious with respect to the IMF and their projections as to Nigeria being only 14% of the nations which they are looking at growth. So we'll see how that pans out. But if your oil production is not meeting your quota and you cannot benefit from it, then how would oil prices be a reason to project a forecast for growth? But hey, these are forecasts. They're subject to change. To the Ivory Coast, very interesting development in the Ivory Coast. The central bank governor, the regional central bank governor, Tiemoko Kone, he's the governor for the Central Bank of West African States. It's the institution for the West African Monetary Union, which includes, and it's headquartered in Dakar, Senegal. That's the BCEAO, which is the Central Bank of West African States. So the West African Monetary Union, of course, includes Benin, Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, Senegal, Niger, Togo. They use the CFA franc, which is anchored to the euro for stability. And Olusegun Ouattara, who is going to be completing his third term in 2025, has named Mr. Kone as vice president. So there's still 3 years to go as far as the elections in Ivory Coast are concerned. But everybody's got a hat, a horse in the race. So he's picked him, puts him next in line to be, at least as a front runner. But it's still 3 years to go. There's still a long way. But it's an interesting development coming out of the Ivory Coast.
I mean, interesting times for the Ivory Coast. So all of this is very political. It's because of what happened to Hambag, as it was fondly called in Ivory Coast, Ahmed Bakayoko of blessed memories. And when you look at Olusegun Ouattara, the people he's trusted so much, to take over for him, have died one way or the other.
He's 80 himself.
Yeah, before Hambag, I forget his name now, died. Then Hambag passed. Then Patrick Ashi was made the minister. Then Patrick Ashi was the prime minister, the premier ministre, and he was suspended recently. But he still retains the position of prime minister. And he too is coming to the fray. So I think what Olusegun Ouattara is doing is trying to make the pool bigger, to look for people he can trust. Straight off the bat, if Hambag Ahmed Bakayoko had not died, the former prime minister, this would not happen. I think the IMF is not, maybe they don't get the memo as regards crude oil theft in this country.
It's very possible because...
It's possible. I don't know what they are reading.
Yeah,
maybe they don't get the...
Don't really know.
I think the IMF in their projection, for example, they should watch more of Ovieteme George's reports.
Yes, from the South-South.
From the South-South.
Right, to know what's happening.
And know what is going on.
And read this day newspaper.
And probably learn more about what they call fire.
Right. I wanted to be Pollyanna and be really excited that 86% of countries are getting revised down and we're getting revised up. But as you said, no. So I'm just going to park that to one side.
Right.
As for the Minister of Employment, I found it very interesting that in his, declaration for his presidential bid, he was citing as, the,
Unity?
benefits of the Buhari government. Yeah, it talks about unity. He was citing infrastructure, railway, building of this road and that bridge. And I was waiting for him to talk about what he did with unemployment.
Right.
And what did he do? Crickets. We heard crickets there. And I think that, if nothing else, is a self-indictment for him.
But he's running. Isn't
and
that...
did not speak about his own. What he said about his own ministry, actually, he talked about the ASU strike and the fact that the UTAS platform failed. But I was waiting for him to talk about how he has boosted employment in this country, how he has created jobs. He was helping other ministers, one of whom is actually in the race, helping him boost his bid, talking about the railway.
I felt... Doctor, yes, go ahead.
Okay, Côte d'Ivoire. Let's start with Côte d'Ivoire. Olusegun Ouattara has done 3 terms as president of Ivory Coast, and he has presided over some of the major crises in the last decade, in that country. That is the largest exporter of cocoa products,
but no chocolates
in the world.
Yep.
Now, what he has done is to position, former minister of construction, Kone, used to be former minister of construction, and you refer to the fact that he's been the head of the BCEAO, in Senegal, as deputy president, which puts him in a pole position to, succeed him. Then there is also the man that he has appointed, he has retained as the deputy president, okay, who will also be there, who also probably has a chance. Now, what has been indicated, it seems to me, in Ivory Coast is that Olusegun Ouattara may have chosen, his successor, because it means that Kone will not have a very strong chance. Ouattara himself is 80. Kone is 73. He's 73 years old, and he's been in the governance system for a very long time. I guess your interest in the matter is that he's a central bank governor. So, okay, Alassane Ouattara himself came from a World Bank background. He's an economist. Now he's picked on another economist, he has positioned him. And there's this conception in many countries of the world that, look, is the economy stupid? Who said that?
James Carville.
James Carville.
Bill Clinton's strategist.
Yes, with Bill Clinton.
Campaign strategist.
And so you find in many countries that when a country is going through a rough patch, they look towards the economists. They did it in Mexico. You know, the economists, PhD holders were put in charge. They didn't achieve any result there. Okay? But in other countries too, they say, oh, put an economist, somebody who knows the economy, in charge.
Yeah.
So that may be one of the justifications. But one, nothing is casting gold. What's his name? President Ouattara is not living until 2025.
Right.
That's a space of about 3 more years. In politics, even 24 hours.
It's a long time.
It's a long time, you know, so there's no guarantee that that will happen. But at the end of the day, the people who will take the decision, we hope, will be the people of Ivory Coast. But of course, when a president anoints somebody or tilts in a direction, he can influence. He can reduce the scope of competition, because other people who may be interested in that position may just withdraw because they say, oh, this is where the big man wants to go. The big man theory in African politics survives. In 2007, for example, when President Obasanjo looked in the direction of Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, all the people who tried to stop him, they didn't succeed. He achieved his will. Now here in Nigeria, I know one other reason you may have brought up the subject is because of Godwin Emefiele, the governor of the central bank, to say, well, what some people are suggesting happens elsewhere. But there are critical differences between Ivory Coast and Nigeria. The critical difference here at the moment is that the president of Nigeria has not anointed anybody.
That's correct.
He says if I anoint somebody, they will go and kill him. You know, so that is a critical difference there. But it is important, I keep saying, for the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria himself to show interest in the matter. You know, we face very serious economic challenges. You know, we face fiscal crisis. You know, we need proper alignment between the fiscal side of things and the monetary side of things. And perhaps somebody who has the knowledge, the experience, may be useful in that regard. Now, you talked about the IMF World Bank projecting better growth.
Despite all the problems you just mentioned just now.
All the problems we have.
Right.
But the reality, as you yourself have pointed out on this program recently, is that food inflation has gone up. I think it's over 17% now.
That's correct.
There is more disturbing information that I've stumbled upon. That it now costs more to prepare
a pot of jollof rice.
Yes. For a family, a household of five.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Is it not SBM intelligence?
We have them coming up today.
They just came up with a report that it has now become an issue for us to be able to eat jollof rice in this country.
That's correct.
7.3% increase.
Climb. That's correct.
So what World Bank is telling us about economic growth, except that economic growth translates into better access to jollof rice and pepper soup.
Then it's not correct.
No, there are issues. Except it translates into a growth in employment rates in Nigeria. Then you may just think that this is just textbook economics that is coming. Because we live here, we feel it, but as you have said, these are forecasts. And forecasts
subject to change.
But it also should be a wake-up call, you know, for those who manage our economy to know that there is serious crisis with food inflation, with headline inflation, with the headwinds ahead of us, and nobody should keep using Ukraine as an excuse.
Because
even before Ukraine, we were
issues.
not doing the right thing.
Right.
Thank you, Rotus.
Thank you.